Benjamin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Zach, man, thank you for having me. This is super exciting.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an episode that's a long time coming.
Yeah.
Sorry for the wait,
You're
brother.
telling me.
But obviously, not only are you my brother-in-law, but for our listeners and viewers, helping them understand a little bit more about our relationship in the background, you're like one of my very best friends, someone that I am incredibly grateful to the Lord for, someone that I glean just from your wealth of wisdom, of knowledge, and experience throughout the years, and someone that I have always looked up to, and I continue to today. But we got to cut that stuff because we can't start crying already. My thing with you, Ben, is when I think of nearing the holiday season, I think of family. I think of memories. I think of traditions, special moments. For you up front, I wanted to have a little fun, and I wanted to allow you the opportunity, if anything comes to mind, if you have any special memories that we've shared together, funny ones, but remember also that this is being, aired and videoed and recorded. So be very cautious about what you share, but I'll give you the mic on this one up front.
Yeah, that's a pretty dangerous question for me, Zach, honestly. We, for people who don't know, Zach and I have known each other for almost 2 decades now. So
a long time.
So quite a bit of experience and memories down the line. And but no, man, honestly, I could have gone a couple different ways here. But the memory I really thought about that's pretty funny. It comes with a Christmas tradition.
Yeah.
For people who to again understand the relationship here. I'm Zach's brother-in-law. I married his sister, Megan. We work for the American Association of Christian Counselors. Zach's dad, Tim, is the president. Well, every year at Tim and Julie's house, we have a Clinton Christmas party.
Yep.
And you got to understand, like, Tim is one of 8 kids. Julie has a sister, and all those kids, have spouses, and they have kids, and their kids have kids.
Yep.
And they all come over.
Tons of people.
Tons
of fun.
To your parents' house, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking like 70 to 80 people in a house. No exaggeration. It's madness, right?
And lots of food. Gotta have food.
Lots of food, lots of singing.
Yes.
A lot of good times. Well, part of what we do at the Clinton Christmas party is we exchange gifts. We do like this Dirty Santa type thing, but also we have a special segment for the children, right?
That's right.
And with the children, we give them door prizes and gifts. Parents will buy it, and say it's from Santa and the whole bit. Well, early on, when Megan and I were first married, I got voluntold to dress up as Santa Claus, and it was wild. And so, I'll do anything for the kids. Like,
oh yeah,
like that's my heart. I'll do it for the kids, right? And so. So I decided that I would dress up like Santa. They had this whole beautiful, Santa outfit. I had the beard. And then part of the experience is I come down the stairs. All the kids are watching me, right? And then I have to run outside. Do you know where I'm going with this yet?
Yes.
I got to run outside and they can go see Rudolph, right? And so they give me sleigh bells in my hand. And I'm running. I have to run down this hill. It's pitch black outside, and there's a light tower far away with a red blinking dot, and that's Rudolph. So I'm supposed to run down this hill as fast as I can, yelling "Ho ho ho ho!" with these with these jingle bells. And I took off. I mean, I'm running faster than Tyreek Hill. I promise you, I was sprinting down this hill, pitch black. And I hit a pothole running down that hill. And I promise you, I think I tore everything in my body. And if you understand where the Clintons live, they live on this lake, and all these geese come in, and there's poop everywhere. I am rolling down this hill.
Oh my
just
goodness.
Covered. And so, anyhow, that's my Christmas tradition for you. And
Dude.
My only regret in that whole situation is that we did not get that on video, because I went through it, but the family got a really good laugh of the rolling Santa there, for sure. So
my goodness, dude, we have had, like you said, so many just fun and hilarious moments. I will never forget that experience as well, because that was just hysterical. Yeah. You were in a lot of pain.
Yeah, my ankle will never forget that experience either.
Never forget that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to do it, like you said, for the kids around the holiday season. You don't want to miss these moments, Ben. As you mentioned, we have known each other since I was 9 years old, when you came and started, coming over to my house. And what I believed was you were coming over to, help coach and mentor me in basketball. And I thought that was the only reason you were coming. But Unfortunately, you betrayed me.
It was a big reason.
Yeah,
it was a really big reason.
Yeah, you
but it wasn't the
betrayed
only
me.
one.
You took a little bit more interest in my sister Megan. But no, I'm so glad that you did. And like you said, we've continued to grow our relationship throughout the years. And man, you are somebody whose work ethic, I think, has been something that has really inspired me the most. Not only are you an MBA grad, you're a law school grad. You have worked tirelessly and feverishly to get you to where you're at in the point today, like you said. Being the CEO of our organization here at the American Association of Christian Counselors, it's amazing to see where God has brought you. And so I want you to really, man, just think about going back in time and kind of unpacking, like, what are some of the biggest lessons that you feel like God has taught you in waiting seasons and challenging seasons that have propelled and catapulted you to kind of the man that sits in front of me today?
Yeah, a lot of different things. I was very generous, by the way. The first thing I just have to say, like, I feel super fortunate to be raised in the family that I was raised in, all the way from my grandparents to my parents to my brothers, to then you and the Clinton family, of course, Megan, and just that whole piece. Very fortunate to have had a group of people that have always pointed me towards the Lord, that have always guided me to do the right choices, not necessarily the easy choices, but the right choices. Even growing up as a kid, I was super, super fortunate to get into the church that I got into, the group of friends I had. Like, I can only pray that my daughters find a group of friends that can help influence and help me make the decisions that I was able to make from a very young age. But when it comes to like a few different like things that I think really help prepare me in my life for this season, one was just like going through the fire, right? And it's this idea of resiliency. And I think, most Christian leaders, if not all, I'll probably use the word all, but I don't know everybody. Like, most Christian leaders have to go through a period of controversy, of really, really dark times, right? And the humanist secular world would just call that resiliencies. But I think like Christian leaders should think of that differently, at least for me in my life. I've always looked at it as surrender, surrendering to the perfect will of God, because then no matter what the dark water is that we're going through, if you have surrendered that to Christ, like, you can be resilient and stay through it, right? Like, you can see your way out. You don't know what it's going to look like, but you trust in the hands that you're in. And so, like, just a couple quick examples for me in my life that I can give you as far as like darker times where I really had to put my trust in God and kind of shaped where we are. And these are happening in reverse order. This one I'm talking about first happened last in my life, and then I'll jump into when I was a kid. But first, the first week I became interim CEO of AACC.
Right.
It was a Monday.
I remember this. Crazy.
They introduced me to the staff as the interim CEO. I told them that my verse for the year was going to be Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your path. I'm in it. Nothing cute about it. Just what it was. And because I'm a young kid stepping into a pretty big role and didn't know how it was going to go. Right. Well, this was March of 2020, and that Wednesday, let me back up one sec. We had a big Ignite Men's Conference coming that Friday and Saturday. Yep. Tebow was coming, got a whole group of speakers and bands coming. We sold it out early, did everything right. Sold it out 2 months early. It was going to be a big win missionally and organizationally for AACC. And super excited that was going to be my first week of CEO of AACC. Well, Wednesday hit and the NBA shut down because of COVID. Thursday hit, the NCAA tournament shut down because of COVID. The event's Friday, right? Yep. And Friday, we're getting all sorts of calls on both sides of the aisle, right? It is, don't you dare shut down this event. This is all, conspiracy theory. Don't give in to it. On the other side, it's, if you don't shut down this event, there is blood on your hands. Right? Like, those are literally comments that I got, from different attendees, want to go. And so I'm like, I'm stressed, right? Governor Northam made an announcement that he was going to make an announcement at 5:00 that night, Friday. Our conference starts at 7.
Right.
We're getting phone calls literally, hey, I'm coming in from North Dakota. Should I get on this flight right now? I mean, it is madness. And I remember driving down the road, headed to the event, thinking about like, what am I going to do? And I looked at myself, saw my eyes in the rearview mirror, and I said, Ben, you got to make a decision. Are you going to trust in the Lord with all your heart, or are you going to just not?
Right.
Which one are you going to do? And that's when I just made the decision, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah.
I surrendered it and said, hey, I'm going to trust that God is going to work this out, whether it is the announcement at 5. I'm worried that this announcement at 5 is you can't do any, social gatherings and all that kind of stuff. We'd have a major problem on our hands. I was, terrified of that.
Yeah.
But I just decided in that surrender place, no matter what the outcome, God has a plan for this and for me and for AACC going forward. And I just got to trust in that plan, regardless of the outcome. Fortunately, it was a different announcement, and we were able to have the event. To our knowledge, no COVID cases came from it, and so super grateful. But it was a probably the best lesson I could have learned first week of being CEO, because it just reminded me or taught me right from the beginning, we did everything right.
Yep.
We truly did everything right for that event. And sometimes you still can't control the outcome. And so being able to have full surrender and trust in God's plan, I think has only allowed ACC to go to different levels since then. A second piece that's real personal to me, but I just think it's important when you're talking about going through the fire.
Yeah.
It's like when I was a 13, 14-year-old boy, I had 3 friends commit suicide, right? And like that was a dark time in my life, right? I'm hormonal, like going through puberty, trying to like understand what's going on. And I just remember like going through some really dark times, and then eventually going to a Word of Life camp and working with the camp counselor there. And then we had this big bonfire event. And I remember surrendering my life to Christ for, as a rededication and saying like, God, I don't know why all this stuff happened over the last couple of years. I don't like it. I don't get it. I wish it never happened. But I'm going to surrender my life to you. And I had no idea what life was going to turn out to be like. I hadn't met you, hadn't met your sister at this point. Just complete surrender of like, God, I just want to be used by you. And my prayer is that we reach millions of people. But whatever that looks like, God, whether it's one person or a million, I'm surrendering to you. Years later, who knew? I certainly had no idea that we would be in this position, CEO of the American Association of Christian Counselors. And like, that's only because of God. And that's only because of, I think a surrender and resilience in life to keep moving towards his will and his perfect place for you. And so those are two of the big things. A second piece is, and this is when I'm mentoring younger people, I just tell them, you got to put in the work before your time has come. Right. And
plow the dirt.
Yeah. I mean, I was CEO at a relatively young age. I think it was 31, 32, but like before that, and this is not at all a brag session. This is
I know that.
Just talking through like, there was real work that has to be done to be ready for leadership.
Right.
So we're talking about 2 undergrads. You're talking about your MBA in project management, then law school, starting an Amazon company during law school, training under mentors during that time. Like there was so much, and then working throughout all of that, right? And there's just so much work that happened from the time I was 18 years old, till the time that it happened, that you can't just, pray that God would open up these doors and not put in the work. You got to be preparing every step of the way. And I think that's one thing that I was fortunate to be able to do. A third piece is mentorship. I think most people need a good coach. I think Steph Curry's probably a really good example of that. Like, as Stephen A. Smith, shout out to Stephen A. if you're watching, It's Stephen A. Stephen A. would say Steph is the best shooter that God ever created, right? And
Yeah.
I tend to agree with him on that. And but Steph still has a shooting coach.
He does.
I mean, think about how crazy that is for a second. Like, the best shooter is taking advice and coaching, humbling himself to take advice and coaching from someone who's a worse shooter than him, because this guy's a coach and is able to look at Steph, and because Steph isn't perfect, still able to tweak and be molded there. So no matter how far along in whatever success is in this life, like, we can always use a mentor and use a coach. And I got so many people that I know that I can call and do call, meet with, and they help, guide our steps, help give me real wisdom, accountability, things like that. I'm just super thankful for all that. And then lastly, it's definitely a team piece here. As CEO, a lot of my responsibility is like a bus driver. I got to point the bus in the right direction, make sure we're going to get to the school that we're trying to get to.
Right.
But then it's also about putting the right people on the bus. Maybe you got to take a few people off the bus if they don't want to be on the bus. And then making sure they're in the right seats, and then enabling them to be successful in what they do. And we're so blessed to have a just 10 out of 10 team of humble, God-fearing people who are missionally minded and all striving towards the same direction. And I think, there's more, but I think in large part, those are some of the key things that have really made these last 3 years pretty sweet at the end of the day.
Man, let me kind of go off of what you just said and just remind people. One, let me thank you for your vulnerability, Benny, and just being able to share a lot of those things, because I know some of those things are still like hurts, right? That still, when you talk about them, when you bring them back up, they can still bring out some old trauma, some old memories. But at the end of the day, you are an incredible friend. You're an incredible leader. Like you mentioned, your work ethic, sometimes you have to plow dirt before you ever see the harvest. And you have done that. You have planted the seed. You have grinded. I've seen it like firsthand. It's been a blessing of mine. There's nobody more deserving. You have earned the right to be a leader, and you are an incredible leader. But also, I think that goes back to what you just touched on, which is being teachable and coachable. And I love that you have a hungry spirit to receive feedback from other people. So I am bragging on you, and that's okay. Let me brag on you, because you are a stud in that way. Now, as you are continuing to just kind of flourish and help us as an organization here at AACC, just continuing to move in the right direction, I'm reminded something that you prioritize a lot still is business ethics, right? So I'm interested, what are some things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis just to make sure that our company and organization is a well-oiled machine?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. One thing I learned in law school, some people don't know this, that, when you're want to take the bar, become a licensed attorney in law school, you actually have to take, at least in Virginia, two different tests. One is the bar that everybody knows about, and one is a ethics and character and fitness test, or in other words, an ethics test. And so when our professors are training us for this ethics test, they helped like make a really important distinction, and that like ethics is actually what you cannot do, meaning like to be an ethical attorney, it's the rules that you cannot break. It doesn't mean you're actually living to like the greatest standards of being ethical.
Right.
And so when I think about like organizational ethics, I actually think about a higher standard of organizational integrity, right? Personal integrity. What are people doing when no one's looking? What is AACC doing when no one's looking? As far as like the day-to-day goes, of course, we've created a lot of standard operating procedures and checks and balances to make sure that things are handled appropriately. We have a lot of trust in our organizations and our people. But if you create systems that allow for transparency and clarity, then it actually becomes like a trustless society of our organization, where we don't have to trust because it's just apparent. You can just look and see right there. And so those are a lot of the things that we do on the day-to-day. But again, just having the right team in so many ways helps that. But again, it's really about an integrity piece. If no one was looking, and if you knew you weren't going to get caught, like what decisions do we make on a day-to-day, knowing that we always have someone watching, knowing that we will be held accountable for every dollar that comes into this building, knowing that we'll be accountable for every person that we try to help. Like, it's a massive burden to carry and to be always thinking about the integrity of what we do is a huge piece of what my job is, for sure.
I love that idea of integrity. Like you said, what are you doing when nobody else is watching, and making sure that you've said this now a couple of times, that the right people are on the bus. I think another form of leadership, and whenever I've had the opportunity of going in, working with organizations or teams or coaches, athletes, whatever it is helping leaders understand the fine line between love and accountability, right? Because where there's all love, no accountability, it may lead to great relationships, but there's no standard of excellence. When there's all accountability and no love, there's no relationship, which can lead to exhaustion, frustration, and burnout, right? It's easy sometimes as a leader to want to create this familial environment, but then you get walked all over and people take advantage of you. Well, at the same time, you don't want to, in a sense, twist the bolt so tight that you break the bolt either. You want to be able to have that relationship. How do you find the balance in leadership to do those things?
Yeah, it's one of the harder things as far as leadership goes. But again, I've said this, I'll say it again, like hiring the right people to be your teammates is 80% of this work, right?
Yeah.
It is so hard to get someone who doesn't want to be here to buy into the culture of, hey, we're going to do hard things. We're going to do meaningful work. We're going to go the extra mile. We're going to work together as a team, right? And so just having a group of people that are like-minded, mission-oriented, getting that right off the bat. That's why we take interviews so seriously.
Yeah.
Is because we really want a team buy-in of who are we letting into this family, right? Because once you're in, you're in. And who do we let have influence into the lives and into the ultimately the people we serve? It's a big piece. But when I think about like having accountability, I try to get to a point where I feel like I can have influence into the life, into the people's lives, right? And that comes with a couple things. That comes with clear expectations, right? If I am upset with you because you came into work at 9:30, but I didn't tell you that work started at 8:30, I can't be upset, right? Because the expectation wasn't clear.
That's right.
So many times leaders get, it's all in their head what the expectations are, but they're not great at communicating clearly. Hey, these are the expectations we have for you. And they get so busy with everything else they're doing as leaders that they don't spend the time to document it, to clearly outlay it. I know I'm certainly not perfect at it, but having clear expectations allows for a line of accountability. And then also like having that personal relationship, right? I just have found, for me personally, like I think, I won't say all again because it's a big number, but I think almost everyone at ACC understands like, I would do anything for our group, right? Like I love our team. And to be able to have the influence by showing up when they need it the most, when they're upset, that I'll hear them out. I'll talk to them about it. When they're going through a hard time, when their car breaks down, I'm there for them. Whatever it is, like showing up and really caring about things both in and outside of work, inside their families, with clear expectations, I think that has allowed us to have a really high level of performance. I really believe we get done more in this, this building with a relatively small amount of employees, like greater than a lot of people I know, right? And I get told that very often. And I think a lot of that comes to that fine line of like clear expectations, having influence, and caring for people. And that's served us really well so far. But it is a balance. And I know many people who just, I love so-and-so. I'm just going to, they're eventually going to get over this. Well, you got to draw some clear expectations. You got to draw some clear boundaries and then hold people accountable. That's right. Right. But at the same time, you cannot be so rigid that people feel like they can't, go to the restroom without, having a major issue. And so that's the balance. We just got to work for it, but it's all about your company culture.
I like that. Like you said, having the right expectations, because where there's a lack of expectation, it leads to an increase in frustration. You talked about just being able to create an atmosphere of like familiarity, building that familiar atmosphere, but also one that represents that of a family. But then also I love, and I'll reiterate it again, finding the right people to jump on your bus, because I feel like everybody in this office space are people that are go-getters, they're hard workers, and they make showing up to work a lot of fun because nobody's in a sense pulling the bus backward. Everybody is on the bus moving this thing forward in the first place. So that is such a blessing. We've talked up to this point, right, a lot about leadership, but now I want to to make a transition here because as we're nearing the holiday season, obviously we're just coming out of Black Friday shopping. We're coming into, right, a lot of gifts need to be purchased, Benjamin. You got 2 little girls that are looking for a lot of little princess dresses. Let me tell you that.
They're covered. Trust me on that.
They're covered?
Go ahead.
That's true. No, but just in knowing that 3 driving factors you always remind me of within people are health, wealth, and relationships. As we focus on wealth a little bit, you're a guru in a sense that I always tell people, and all my friends even go to you for financial advice and sage wisdom. It can be challenging for people, especially around the holiday season, to be able to manage finances. What's some advice you just give them up front?
Yeah, well, this is definitely my favorite time of year. I love Christmas, and but you're right. Finances are typically pretty tight this time of year, and so the conversation, like there's always 2 ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Very little do I find someone who has a pretty good balance here. It's, hey, we got to be so generous that we're almost like reckless over here. And then the other side is, we can't spend $5 more than what we budgeted, and it causes this huge family issue, right? Mm-hmm. And both are totally unnecessary. And so, I believe God loves generosity, right? But I do think there's a line of, hey, be generous, but not reckless. Yep. And then when I think about generosity, like for the people who really struggle with that, right? Who want to be generous, but they're so budget minded. And by the way, that's where I naturally sit. Is I'm much more.
You help me with my budget,
right? Help you with your budget. I'll create Excel sheets like the best of them. I'll get it all squared away. Yeah. And my wife is much more on the generous side, right? Mm-hmm. But I love being generous. I also love following a budget. So it's like my 2 personalities talking to me sometimes. But when I'm thinking about generosity, it's like, well, how do I be generous? I don't have the money. I got a fixed income. Like we got to find ways to be generous. And we live in a, America that opportunities are not without here. You are able, like for you, Zach, if you're a counselor, like see a few more sessions from now till Christmas and generate a few more dollars so that you can be generous, right? Yeah. If you're able to go rake some leaves somewhere, like go do that, make some extra dollars. If you're able to put in some overtime hours, go do that. Like there are so many ways to make a few $100 here or there that you can do it from now to Christmas. Create a little margin that you normally wouldn't have to be generous with. But on the flip side, like I do understand there are some people in some really tough situations that just cannot be generous financially. And that's okay. Like I think about my grandparents. They're I won't say their age because I love them and I don't want them to be upset with me, but like they're getting older in life. And if I could do one of 2 things, if I could either send them, a $100 gift or give them a phone call on Christmas Day with my 2 daughters and wife and let them just talk for 20 minutes. Like that's a form of generosity.
That's right.
In that, like, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for people to think about them, to do something special for them. Maybe I send them a card in the mail with their photos in it, right? And just small things that are really generous. Can I volunteer my time to help them, right? And just so when we're thinking about generosity, it doesn't have to be financially. My encouragement to everyone there is like, if you want it to be financially, like just go do the extra work. It's out there. Yeah. You just got to go find it, and to be generous, because it's such a blessing to see someone be truly excited about when they receive something, and it is better to give to receive, and to see the look on someone's face when they receive something they've always wanted and didn't think they had a shot to get. For you to be that deliverer of it, it's amazing. But then also, like, if that's just not where you're at, it's just absolutely not possible, then look for other ways. And that's what I would say during this time. Like, it is so good to be generous, and there are so many different outlets to do that.
I like what you're saying. Look for and cultivate ways to be generous. You're not saying be reckless with your money or anything like that, but rise to the occasion when opportunities arise. Be willing to take them, so that way, again, you can cultivate ways to be generous to others during this Christmas season. Ben, I read a quote the other day that said, "Some people are poor because all they have is money." To be honest, some of the wealthiest people I know are the ones that are not so financially secure and safe, but more so the ones that are prioritizing and are rich in their relationships with God and their faith and with others, especially their friends and their family. Ben, for you, I know obviously you are a financial coach, kind of. You advise a lot of people in that realm. But at the end of the day, you prioritize your relationships, right? With God first and foremost, but then with Meg, with Olivia and Sophia, with, other family, your family, our family, so many extended work family here, right? How do you prioritize those things during the midst of this Christmas season too?
Well, yeah, I just want to touch on your first point there. Like, I've seen it so many times where people just obsess over money, right? And it's literally steals all the joy from them. I've seen some of the wealthiest people I know are
Empty
the most
and lonely.
miserable people.
Yep.
I've also been blessed to see some really wealthy people have the most generous heart.
That's true.
And it's all comes down to a stewardship principle of God owns everything, right? Like if you really think about it, God owns everything.
That's
we
right.
don't own anything. Like even, I'll try to explain this right. Like we get so wrapped up and try and like hold on to our marbles, right? Like this is mine.
Right.
You can't take it. I got to add more marbles to my bag, right? Like I got to buy this house and I got to pay it off and I got to get another house and I got to buy this land. Like one day you're not going to own it. It is going to be totally meaningless, right? If you buy a farm, like that's not your farm. You're a temporary steward of it. There was someone 100 years ago who said that farm was their farm. It's not their farm anymore, right? Someone 50 years from now is going to own that farm. It's not your farm anymore. You can't take it with you. And so like when you think about like finances and stewardship, like I just really am trying to get across to people like it is good. I am a big proponent of financial wellness and having a plan and having a budget and leaving generational wealth and the whole piece. But like
Absolutely.
there at the same time, like you have to have the right heart behind it and understanding like you can't take it with you. And God, you're not going to get to heaven one day and God's going to say like, how much money did you make? And you say $100 million. And he said, good. How many crowns of heaven do you want to buy? Like that's not the conversation,
that's not it.
right? Like he's going to ask like, how'd you use my money to advance my kingdom? That's right. How'd you care for the sick, the needy, the widows, right? Like that's the conversation that's going to be had. And so just, again, if you know me, like I'm all about being smart financially and being a good steward of what God has given us. But so many times we get so wrapped up into like this crazy idea that we can take this stuff with us. Right. And it's just temporary. We're just everything in life. The Ecclesiastes principle, meaningless. Everything's meaningless. Like I mentioned earlier, I was the interim CEO for AACC for a little bit of time. Yep. Like my title is no longer that. I am still the interim CEO of AACC. Yeah. There will be a CEO after I'm done. Yeah. Right. I don't know who it is. I don't know how long that's going to be. Yeah. But like, we're all just passing through. And when you can get that eternal mindset around things, like it will really change how you view this life and how you view people. And so that's one thing that I always try to like think through. But to answer your question, sorry, I got on a tangent.
I love
there.
that. The principle of stewardship. That's good.
Like when I think about faith and family, like I think about from the faith side, like from business ROI versus eROI. So return on investment versus eternal return on investment. And that's that whole principle of like,
I like that.
Is what I'm doing matters? Will it matter in eternity? Right. And to be clear, you don't have to be working at AACC or a Christian organization for your work to matter in eternity. It's just with what you do and who you meet with and who you work with, and then the income you do produce from whatever you do. Are you using that for eternal purposes, or are we using that to advance self? Like I think that's the real piece there. And so I just often try to, reframe so many times, say like, what is the eternal return on investment here? Is my time, resources, thoughts going to things that, help me here on this earth? Or are they going to things that are going to promote God's kingdom and get a few more people to celebrate in heaven with us? Like that's always my mindset on it. And when it comes to family, like I think about legacy, right? Like regardless of the financial side of it, like Megan and I, we will only be known down the road for what our family does, right? Like 200 years from now, no one's going to know the name Ben Allison. It's just not going to matter, no matter how successful. It just doesn't. Like there are so many people. Just go on a big enough time horizon, people are not going to know who we are. Yeah. But if we can raise a line of champions for Christ, if we can raise a line of people who fear after the Lord and can be good stewards of what God has given us, both the relationships, the health side, and the wealth side of it all, like then we have a legacy of God-fearing people. And that's, we can't control all that, but if we can do our best to raise up young girls, that we currently have two young girls, if we can raise them up to be people who fear after the Lord, who want to be good stewards of what he's given us, and then I think we've done something well there. So that's typically how I think about, spending time with family, spending time with my faith. It's all about the eternal purpose behind it all.
That's so good because you talked about the principle of stewardship, but also the principle of investment. And I like that difference between ROI, return on investment, and EROI, eternal return on investment, because that's a great idea. And like you said, what are you investing in? Is it impactful? Will it outlive you? Legacy, when you emphasize legacy, those things outlive you. And I see you do that all the time. So I know you are a man of your word. You actually teach what you preach. So thank you so much for doing that, Ben, and for raising my nieces up in the right way. It's a blessing to see. Dude, as we wrap it up, I obviously could have these conversations with you every week if we want to. We should be We should be doing more like this. But as we close it up, man, again, the holidays are right around the corner. As you know, I always love to leave the guest the opportunity to share just the pressing word that God has placed on their heart for such a time as this. So maybe, Ben, the person I want you to speak to today is the person who's been out there. Maybe they have misprioritized some of the things in their own personal life. Maybe they're struggling financially. Maybe they're discouraged. Maybe they're disappointed during this holiday season. What's just a pressing word of hope, encouragement, and motivation that you'll leave them with today that would hopefully catapult them into having one of the greatest Christmas seasons they could possibly imagine or think of?
Yeah, well, to that person, let me just say we're all decrepit human beings. We've all been there. If we're not there right now, we will be there down the road, right? And so first off, like give yourself some grace and say like, hey, we can get out of this. You can get out of this. I think it's going to take some intentional living for like what God has for you. We got to understand like this life is fleeting. It is meaningless, but you do not get any do-overs, right? That's right. And so I really want to encourage people to like, don't float through life. Don't let life happen to you. Like what you do for a living, make it worth your while. Make it, honor God with what you do. Like this is the time that you want to be spending and thinking about what does God want your life to look like, right? And, I like this one quote. It says that the goal, isn't to live with dreams, but is to die with memories. And when I think of memories, I'm thinking about like things that you were able to do to further advance God's kingdom. Like now is the time to be thinking about 2024, 2025. I think about this all the time. Got it from Jeff Bezos. Like when I'm 90 years old and I'm sitting on my deathbed, you want to reduce the amount of regrets you potentially could have. If you can put yourself as your 90-year-old self and think about how can I reduce regrets, like that's an important piece to be thinking about and reflecting on. And so now is that perfect time. Like, what does God have for you? Like, what does God have for you? And put together a plan. And go get that coaching. Go find someone that can mentor you. And then once you got some good mentorship going on, like go do the work, right? Like that's my encouragement. But like this life is not a steel box. You can help navigate where and how you go. My word of advice is like align it with God's will for your life and what God's calling you to do. And it's been a beautiful ride. And so that's my word of encouragement. But man, it's Christmas time. Like spend time with those who you love. If you need to forgive someone, like spend some time to do that. Like don't miss Christmas. That's something your dad always says. And I've only come to appreciate that even more. But like, this is the time. You will never get this Christmas back. And so don't miss it.
I love that's exactly kind of what James chapter 4 really talks about when it says this life is but a vapor, right? Here for a second, gone the next. Also, I think I've set a world record for as many times as I said this quote from Dr. James Dobson. I say it all the time because it sums up very beautifully exactly what you shared. Life will trash your trophies. All that matters in the end is who you loved and who loved you. Like you said, like our family says, like Ruth Ann, Aunt Tootie Smulik says,
Don't miss it.
Don't miss it. Our prayer for every listener and viewer out there is that you wouldn't miss this Christmas and focus where your feet are, exactly where God has you today. Benjamin Allison, my brother-in-law and one of my best friends in the world, thank you so much again just for joining us for a conversation on the podcast today. Thanks for everything that you do. Thank you for our friendship. I love you. I appreciate you more than words could ever express.
Love you too, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.